So how do you know if you're a 4 on the Enneagram or not? It can be really confusing because many of us, when learning the Enneagram, and I remember all the years ago when I was learning, we can go, but I can do that, I can do that, I relate to this, I relate to that. So how on earth do we figure it out? I'm going to offer you 5 key insights, and I'm going to layer them one upon each other. Each of these insights has been curated over many years of working with clients and coaches who work with the Enneagram and leaders. And they're all designed to help you to really tease apart, am I a 4 or not? We're going to first look at a little soundbite that our 4 clients often relate to, quite reliable. Then I'm going to layer on what I call the green pearls, so that you can understand why a 4 does what a 4 does. The polarity, which is the unique way a 4 expresses that green pearl. I'm going to lean into a quick harmonic discussion, which can be a key distinguisher. And finally, to put a bow on it, we're going to look at the growth path of a 4 to see if and how you relate to that. I'll start by saying our 4s on the Enneagram don't always like the Enneagram. And understandably, because our beautiful 4s are looking for a unique way to express their sensitive, beautiful souls, their sense of self in the world, their identity in the world. And along comes this very structured, can look quite rigid, typing process that it seems to put everyone in a box. And a 4 can feel that really just goes right up against something intrinsic in me that says, I don't want anyone to define me in this way. So in all the other videos, I saved some of this to last, but I'm going to say up front for you, if you are a 4 in the Enneagram, you are always more than your personality. We all are. Think of this as walking around the garden and spotting a plant, extraordinary and ordinary, all at the same time, and looking at the leaf to see the pattern. Because when we know the pattern, when we know the design, we know what to feed it. We know what it needs to grow. So with that loving invitation, let's explore whether you possibly have a 4 personality type. And forgive me, I sometimes get into the old habit of saying you are a 4, you aren't a 4. It's the language we use. But know that none of us are you are a 4. You are always more, okay? You are so much more. So let's explore each of these expressions. So we look at feelings as weather. Our beautiful 4s have very intense feelings, a big emotional bandwidth, to the point that it can feel, and I love the metaphor of weather. You know, you can have a beautiful sunny day, but you can also have a misty day that feels like longing. You can have a thunderous storm. You can have a dry day without any humidity. You could have tornadoes, and you could have gentle breezes. And I think if just feel this with me, that our 4s in the Enneagram, emotions feel like that. They feel like weather patterns moving in, a cold front, and then an intense high pressure system. So feelings can feel like facts for our 4, because our 4s are very sensitive, very tuned into emotion. This is also why our 4s can be very good at articulating, almost looking for the word for the feeling. Instead of, I'm sad, a 4 might be looking for, it's not quite sadness. And there's this nuanced searching through vocabulary for, it feels like grief. It feels like a sharp pain in my heart. And this is why not all fours, they're very important. I've worked with many fours who don't have any artistry in them, but the metaphor of art and artistry lands quite well for a four, because you can imagine art is about looking for, it's not just blue, it's cyan or it's Prussian blue. There are these shades, and our fours are looking for that kind of expression. It's not just cold or hot. It's a humid day, a balmy humidity. So this articulation of feelings and feeling like feelings are facts, they are central to our four. How is that landing so far? Let's continue our journey together. Now we layer on the green pearl. The green pearl is shared by 2, 3, and 4. And it's really super important to understand what I mean with this metaphor that I use, because many of us can get the Enneagram wrong, get confused, because we think that the Enneagram is about behavior. We think it's about what we do, whereas it's not about what we do. It is about why am I doing what I do. Just like the grain of sand is the why behind the pearl. It's the reason the oyster coats it with layers upon layers and eventually a pearl forms. Your personality is formed around this deeper hidden reason. And for a 4 on the Enneagram, that is what I call green pearl. And I offer 4 key words that are like elements that make up the green pearl. Now, each of these words should not be seen in isolation, because the moment we look at one word on its own, we get confused again, because everyone has a heart. Everyone can feel shamed or embarrassed. Everyone can do a certain amount of masking, and everyone can be aware of their image in the world and how they're seen. But when you put them all together and you see them as rising and falling together, and you anchor that into this idea of feelings as weather and feelings as facts, now you're starting to understand 4 in the Enneagram. All we'll need to do next is connect that to the polarity, and then you will have a very beautiful, succinct essence of 4 on the Enneagram. So what we mean by heart is not just feelings and emotions, although feelings, as we've said, very big theme for 4 specifically. What I mean, and this is a nice little soundbite, is the heart wants what the heart wants. So you can tap into words like longing, desire. So what we're talking about here is that a driver of behavior, a core motivator for 4, is this feeling of the heart wanting, the heart yearning. And what is it wanting? Well, it wants ultimately to know that it is whole and complete, but it might not know that. And therefore, there can be a triggering of shame. Now, shame, as that grain of sand in the personality pearl, can be low volume or high volume. So it's quite helpful to think of it as this type of continuum, right? Because it's not always full-blown shame. The low expression of shame, think about it, is embarrassment, that feeling of ow in the heart, that ouch feeling. The more intense expression can feel like loathing, self-loathing, being mortified, very, very sensitive, tender. Now, our 4s relate to the extremes of all the emotions. So when a 4 is learning about the Enneagram, there is this identification with extremes, deep fear, deep sadness, even anger, although there is often a gentleness about 4s. So it's not a true red pearl anger. It can feel a little bit more like theatrical, yeah, or hysterical even. I know that's quite a hectic word, but there can be this intense emotional weather explosion of emotions, but it still tends to be gentler for our fours. It has because there's a sensitivity here that starts to show up. So fours tap into all the extremes. What they don't tend to tap into or relate to is the balanced, functional expression. So instead of it's just a warm day, no, it can't just be a warm day or a cool day. There are these edges that our four plays in. Therefore, unlike 2 and 3, who don't really enjoy or relate to the extremes of shame, when I talk to my beautiful 4 clients, they know self-loathing. They know the deep, intense guilt that our green pearls all experience, but a 4 can go there because the 4 can play in the deep end of the ocean of emotions. Does that make sense? Let me know how this is landing for you. If you're not a 4, this might be a distinguisher, okay? All our green pearls mask. They all exaggerate something to be seen in a certain way. It's like, I'll show you this, but I won't show you that. Now, 4s can have a dance with this. It's like I want you to see me, but I don't. I want you to understand me, but not too much. There's this movement, unconscious or conscious, with the masking. And finally, there is still an image. There's still I want you to see me as, conscious or unconscious of it. And certainly it's going to link into the polarity, which we'll cover next. So 2, 3, and 4 share a green pearl, but each of them expresses it differently and copes with it differently. And how a 4 expresses that green pearl is through the polarity of I'm special, not ordinary. Now, we could use the word unique, we could use other words, but I quite like the word special as a more reliable word. So think of a pendulum swinging one way and another. The heart of a green pearl and a 4 longs for specialness. So the pendulum wants to move that way, and it doesn't want to move towards ordinary, because ordinary feels like shame. Now, if you're not a 4, this won't land. For a 4, it can be quite a revelation to realize, to become conscious of the fact that this pattern of personality, this expression of life through personality, longs for uniqueness and specialness, not because it's just quite natural for everyone to want to feel special in some way, to anyway see that every expression of life is truly unique. This is different to ordinary feels like pain. Ordinary feels like hurt. That worth is attached to specialness. I am only as worthy as I am special. Therefore, ordinary becomes very, very threatening. If I am ordinary, then I am worth nothing. I am worth less. That is a key insight here. So some 4s take that longing for specialness and express it through flair. And you'll see we're going to tie into some of the keywords here. Flair, through originality, okay? And sometimes you see that on the outside as differentness, but sometimes you don't. So some 4s will use this longing and dress differently, do something different with their hair, their jewelry, almost a Lady Gaga type of artistry coming out through fashion or through appearance. But a lot of fours don't. But what you will hear with those fours is that it's expressed through language, especially when describing feelings. Now, fours don't mind shocking you. Yes, to be different, right? Everyone is saying the sky's blue. I'm going to say, I don't think it's blue, I think it's cyan. And I'm going to say the thing that makes you go, you're not the same as everyone else. So this uniqueness. Now there's some wounding around being the outsider, but there's also an intentional, I enjoy the fringes. I don't want to be mainstream, right? And therefore, and I know I'm jumping around here, but there's a mask of unique identity, and self-expression is part of the image. So I form an image from how I get to express myself. Now, here is a very important key insight. If my wound makes me feel special, I am reluctant to heal my wound. I'll say that again. If the thing that hurts deep inside me, the story of suffering or some aspect of me that I know feels a bit broken or feels like it needs healing, it's almost as if my apple tree is unique because it has scars from not being watered enough, I might decide not to water it. And that's tender, isn't it? That's a little bit, that touches into the sensitivity of our fours, and it does link to the growth path of the four, which we will talk about in a moment after the harmonic. And this is really how a four is walking this path of this longing for specialness, not wanting to be ordinary, and sometimes when the wound or the story become a source of originality and specialness, that can be a very tough trap to heal and to move out of, right? And a lot of the fours I've worked with that are very brave to go there, because we all need to be very, in a way, courageous to do this kind of deep inner work around the Enneagram. And for a four, it is really to confront that in a gentle, sensitive way and to find a healthier way to express specialness, to be able to feed the apple tree what it needs, to give it water and love and care, but still celebrate its uniqueness in the world. How does that land for you? Amongst the many contributions that Riso and Hudson have made to the world of the Enneagram, one of the gems is the harmonics. So in true Cole style, I've taken the teaching of the harmonics and distilled it and crystallized it into a couple of sound bites that over the years have just polished themselves into something with alliteration, to make it easy to digest. Let's look at which harmonic four belongs to. So for the sake of alliteration, I've used the word purge instead of some of the common language, reactive, etc. But that is so that I can link it to the other two harmonics, practical or pragmatic, and positivity. So 4, 6, and 8 belong to this harmonic. So check how you relate and resonate with this. The harmonic, which I call the purge harmonic, means that 4s, 6s, and 8s need something first to bond and connect to someone, to a team, to an individual. And that is space to purge. To purge in a green pill way, to purge in a blue pill mind way, or to purge in a red pill irritated or venting way. But this is venting. So our 4 bonds through emotional expression, bonds through hear my pain or my story. And if there is no space given to a 4, 6, or 8 to do this, 5, 10 minutes, they feel less connected, less bonded. Unlike the positivity harmonic that needs to first bond through something uplifting, positive, or the pragmatic or practical harmonic that needs something, let's do something useful, let's talk about something real, let's focus on how we can do it better, get it done, roll up our sleeves type of conversation. Our fours, and if you're a four, you're nodding going, yeah, I need that. If you're a 6, you need it too. If you're 8, you need it, but 8s won't relate to the theater and the drama of the 4. If you're a 4, you know this. You know that even if you don't know someone really well, and this is not all the time, of course, but sometimes you will just feel, I want to bond with this person. And the way of bonding is to first share some of your feelings, some of the sensitivity of your soul, some of your story, even some of your wounding. And if someone gives you space for that, you feel connected to them. If someone doesn't, you may feel less connected. How does that land for you? To put a bow on this and to really layer on the last piece, we look at the growth path of 4 on the Enneagram. The way I describe this and teach this is a little bit different to how sort of mainstream Enneagram articulates this. I like to talk about this in terms of doors open and doors closed. For a 4 to move from its lowest expression to its highest expression, and what I mean by highest is wholeness. It is reflecting the deepest, truest self through the personality, is by accessing the best of one. Not to become a different type, not to become a 1, but because something about what a 4 needs to grow is shown in the best of 1. Like knowing what a plant needs to thrive. If we give our personalities what they need, they blossom and they shine and they grow. How this is useful and helpful is that it can also tell us what it looks like when a 4 is not getting that. So if the door is closed to 1 on the Enneagram, the expression of 4 literally lacks the best of 1. So if I describe the best of 1 in the light of what a low expressing 4 lacks, look to see how you relate. Now, if you've done a lot of personal growth work, you will still know this about yourself, but you'll know it as in that used to be very true, it's less true now, or it was like that last Thursday, Cole, but today's a good day and I'm not feeling that. So there is just be flexible in this understanding. If you're not a 4, first of all, some of what I've discussed would just really not land, and this won't land. You'll say, but I access 1 very easily, always have. Okay? So 1 on the Enneagram is, in some ways, it represents the best of ordinary. It is literally scrub the temple floors. It is duty, responsibility, paying the bills, being an ordinary, contributing citizen, making some kind of responsible work in the world. It is structure. It is gray sometimes because it doesn't look flashy. It's a blade of grass amongst millions of blades of grass, contributing to the environment through its existence. Yeah, and that sounded pretty cool. Sorry, moment of, that was pretty poetic, huh? Which the 4 would, if you're a 4, you love the poetry of it, but you don't want to be a blade of grass. I heard one of my beautiful trainers describe opening the door to 1 so perfectly. Her name is Sophia, and she said this, and I've always used it ever since. Opening a door to 1 as a 4 in the Enneagram is I do my laundry even if I'm sad. So even when the the weather storms of feelings are brewing, and even when feelings feel like facts, and there's a deep, dramatic, moody intensity, opening a door to one is laundry, paying the bills, doing the same work for the 100th time because it needs to be done, because I made a promise, because I have a commitment, because life at the deepest level does want to do its job. Ironically, that'll feel like but when fours access one and move to the highest, the irony is they find the extraordinary and the miracle in the ordinary. And they find a way to express their sensitive, unique voice in the world in a way that pays the bills, in a way that doesn't break promises and leave their heart feeling more shame and more guilt. Does that land? There might be some bitter medicine in that, right? Or salt a little bit on that wound. But when we know that this is how we can support our personalities, we've gained a real gift. So remembering that in some ways, the personality is like a song rising in the self. It has structure. It wants to be harmonious. Like everything in life wants to care for itself so that it can express at its highest. Not in a Hollywood best kind of highest, really expressing its being authentically and beautifully, and making a contribution through that is a natural instinct for all of us. It's a natural longing in all of us because it is true. So you, if you are a 4 on the Enneagram, are always more than your personality. You're not being put in a box. You're being shown the box you may already be in, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, and a path out. In other words, the part of you that is part of life, your personality, it's like, oh, it's not personal to recognize it just needs some water. It just needs some sunshine. This is what it needs to grow. And then we get to be kind friends to ourselves. And then you get to also have an opportunity to discover the miracle of collapsing these polarities and seeing that you have always been something beautiful and extraordinary. So if this speaks to you, if this served you, or if you know someone that this kind of teaching would support, you know the drill, you know what to do, the like, subscribe, forward, all of those good things. Thank you.